Welcome back to the show. Despite what Republicans want people to think, banning books isn't about protecting the children. It's actually an organized effort to silence any perspectives that oppose conservative views. And it's not your average PTA parents leading the charge.
The new rules are enforced by conservative activists, many of whom don't live in the community or aren't even parents, who show up at school board meetings to spout conspiracy theories and threaten administrators.
They're being sponsored by right-wing organizations like Heritage Action, the campaign arm of the Heritage Foundation, and a Daughters of the Confederacy-style group called Moms for Liberty.
Moms for Liberty actually changed their name from Moms Interested in Liberty and Freedom after their original acronym brought all kinds of freaks to their monthly meetings. Moms for Liberty, which started just a little more than a year ago in Florida, claims it just wants to support parental rights in schools. But the truth is much more disturbing. Despite attempts to look like a small grassroots organization, Moms for Liberty is partially funded by right-wing groups, appears to have a super PAC, and has ties to Ron DeSantis' political allies. It even hosts high-dollar fundraisers featuring people like Megyn Kelly. So instead of annoying people on television, she got to annoy people face-to-face. Moms for Liberty recently filed a complaint in Tennessee objecting to several children's books about Black history for, let's be honest, being about Black history.
Why did the Moms for Liberty object to the book Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington? Well, because it describes white police spraying powerful fire hoses at Black children marching for equal rights to the point where the water tore off their clothes, which actually happened. So they, of course, have labeled that pornography.
Moms for Liberty is mostly concerned about 4 books being taught in 2nd grade. One tells a story of school segregation through the eyes of Mexican-American students. One is about the March on Washington. And 2 are about civil rights icon Ruby Bridges.
Moms for Liberty complained that one of those books about Ruby Bridges failed to mention other Black heroes such as Colin Powell, Justice Clarence Thomas, and Secretary Ben Carson. What? They have their own books. They even have one together, Eat, Pray, Love. It's about a woman who eats dinner with Colin Powell, prays with Clarence Thomas, and makes love to Ben Carson, all at the same time. Moms for Liberty has been accused of using militant tactics to accomplish their agenda. One school board official reported that members picketed in front of her house, followed her to her car while shouting at her, and sent her threatening mail. Even scarier, they sent her that copy of Eat, Pray, Love with Ben Carson on the cover. Another organization at the forefront of up libraries is No Left Turn in Education. No Left Turn, which took off after being featured on Tucker Carlson, has been accused of swarming school board meetings. No Left Turn's founder doesn't even have kids in public school, but the group has still circulated a list of more than 75 books that says spread radical and racist ideologies. You know, books like Anti-Racist Baby, Woke Baby, and What Does It Mean to Be White? Which is honestly the most accurate book I've ever read. It's only 1 page long, and it's just a picture of Moby shopping at Trader Joe's. Unsurprisingly, almost the entire list features Black or LGBTQ stories and has children's books that promote activism and diversity. These groups are deeply plugged into Republican politics, so it's no surprise conservative politicians are leaning into their crusade. Glenn Youngkin, the recently elected Virginia governor and perpetual mouth breather, centered his campaign on banning CRT and even featured a book banner in an ad.
As a parent, it's tough to catch everything. So when my son showed me his reading assignment, my heart sunk. It was some of the most explicit material you can imagine. I met with lawmakers. They couldn't believe what I was showing them. Their faces turned bright red with embarrassment.
To be fair, her lawmakers are 2 radishes with glasses, so it's hard to tell. The book Murphy is referring to is Toni Morrison's 1987 novel Beloved, a story about the horrors of slavery. Murphy claims her son, who was a high school senior, started getting night terrors when he read the book and had to give up on it, which, on one hand, sure, it's hard to see your kids deal with something like that. On the other hand, your kids should be horrified by the enslavement of millions of people. That's why we should be teaching these books. Also, it turns out that story was bullshit because the incident in question occurred 10 years ago, and her son is now a nearly 30-year-old Republican lawyer who still probably never finished a book. Meanwhile, Governor Youngkin isn't the only one taking advantage of this movement.
A Florida House committee passed a bill last week that would ban discussions about sexual orientation or gender identity in schools. It's being called the Don't Say Gay bill.
A bill making its way through Florida state legislature and being pushed by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis would bar public schools and businesses from making people feel discomfort or guilt when being taught about the history of racial discrimination in America.
This is certainly something that has rallied Governor DeSantis' supporters.
To be fair, all it takes to rally DeSantis' supporters is telling them there's a new Fuddruckers opening or an old Fuddruckers closing. What makes this current book banning frenzy particularly terrifying is how organized it is and how conservatives are directly intimidating and threatening teachers, school board members, and librarians to get their way.
Why are you afraid to show your face when you talk about your job?
There was a day not too long ago when I had to stop and think, when they come in with handcuffs and they come in with a warrant for my arrest for alleging that I've provided obscene material to minors, who am I going to call first?
This is all happening to school librarians, people who are usually pretty boring, quiet job.
Boring? Oh, I think you'll find reading is quite an adventure. It's maddening that a librarian feels the need to conceal their identity on TV like they witnessed a mob hit. Book banning is just the latest move in the GOP's long-standing effort to hamstring teachers and dismantle public education. Again, book banning is censorship. It's fundamental for children to read books that might challenge their views. And frankly, it's our only hope to raise a generation that doesn't talk for 10 years about the time their white adult son made himself out to be the victim because he had to read a book about slavery. Oh my God, loser. We'll be right back. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to hear more from Full Frontal, like and subscribe. If you'd like to hear some opinions from a man in a lifted truck, leave YouTube on autoplay.